The most dangerous person in your life will never raise their voice. They will never threaten you. They will never do a single thing you could point to and call cruel. And yet, somehow, month after month, you will find yourself smaller, quieter, more confused about your own memory, and more certain that the problem is you. In this audiobook, you will learn to see the machinery behind that. You will learn to name every tactic while it is still happening, and shut it down with a single sentence. Start listening now. Let me begin with the most uncomfortable truth in this entire audiobook. Being intelligent will not protect you. You may already know this, somewhere underneath, and refuse to look at it directly. You are a capable person. You read. You think. You have talked other people out of bad relationships, spotted the scam email, seen through the salesman, and still, if you are honest with yourself, there is at least one person in your life right now, or one person in your past, who could make you doubt something you watched with your own eyes. Someone who could take a conversation you remember clearly and hand it back to you rearranged, and you would take it. You would walk away from that exchange, apologizing for something you did not do. How does that happen to a person who is not stupid? It happens because manipulation does not attack your intelligence. It never has. Manipulation attacks your decency. It targets your empathy. Because empathy makes you consider their pain before your own. It targets your fairness, because fairness makes you assume the other side has a point. It targets your humility, because humility makes you willing to believe you might be the one who got it wrong. It targets your loyalty, because loyalty makes you stay long past the moment a stranger would have walked out the door. Every single quality that makes you a good person is a door, and manipulation is simply the practice of knowing which doors are unlocked. That is why the kindest people you know so often end up in the worst situations. Not because they are weak, because they are open. And nobody ever taught them that being open and being defenseless are two different things. So, understand what this audiobook is and what it is not. This is not a book about becoming cold. It is not about assuming everyone has an agenda, treating your friends like suspects, or armoring yourself until nothing gets in. That is not strength. That is just a different kind of prison. And the people who live in it are not safe. They are only alone. This is a book about clarity, about learning the specific, repeatable, disturbingly predictable patterns that manipulative people use, so that the next time one of them runs a play on you, you recognize it the way a mechanic recognizes a sound in an engine. Not with panic, with diagnosis. Here is how the work is going to unfold. First, you will learn why this works on you specifically, because until you understand the mechanism inside your own mind, every warning sign in the world is useless. Then you will learn to detect. You will go through the tactics one at a time. The early signals that appear long before real damage. The reality distortion. The guilt engineering. The manufactured intimacy. The emotional cycling. The isolation. The weaponized victimhood. The contempt disguised as humor, and the language games that make you feel insane in the middle of an ordinary sentence. You will learn what each one looks like from the inside while it is happening to you, which is the only place it actually matters. And then you will learn to shut it down. Not to argue better, not to win, to end the tactic mid-move with words you can actually say out loud in a real conversation without shaking. Because here is what nobody tells you. Manipulation is not powerful. It only appears powerful because it operates in the dark. It requires you not to have a name for what is happening. The moment you can identify a tactic, out loud, in the room, in front of the person running it, that tactic dies, not slowly, instantly. A manipulator can survive your anger. They can survive your tears. What they cannot survive is your accuracy. By the end of this, you will not be a harder person. You will be a clearer one. And you will notice something strange happening in your life. Something almost everyone reports after they learn this material. The manipulative people will begin to drift away from you on their own. They will not announce it. They will not fight you for it. They will simply stop finding you worth the effort and go looking for someone who still cannot see them. That is what we are building. Let us begin where it actually starts, which is not with them at all. Chapter 1. Why manipulation works on you. Everybody wants to start with the manipulator. What is wrong with them? What happened in their childhood? Whether they are a narcissist, a sociopath, a wounded person repeating a pattern, it is the most natural place for the mind to go, and it is the least useful, because here is the problem with starting there. You cannot change them. You cannot diagnose them from inside the relationship, and you will spend years trying to understand a person who benefits enormously from you being confused about them. Every hour you spend analyzing their psychology is an hour you are not spending on the only variable you actually control. So we start with you. Not because this is your fault. It is not. But because the lock is on your side of the door. There are 4 reasons this works on you. And I want you to notice which ones land. 1. You were raised to be agreeable. Think about what you were rewarded for as a child. Sharing. Not making a scene. Apologizing first. Considering how the other person feels. Being the bigger person. Letting it go. These are genuinely good things, and I am not going to tell you they are not. But notice what they all have in common. Every one of them trains you to prioritize the comfort of the room over the accuracy of your own perception. By the time you are an adult, that training is not a choice you make. It is a reflex. Someone pushes. And before you have consciously decided anything, you have already softened, already made space, already started constructing the sentence that will smooth this over. You do not experience this as weakness. You experience it as being a decent human being, which is exactly why it is so hard to see. A manipulative person does not need to break that reflex. They just need to find it. And they find it fast, usually within the first few conversations, because you display it constantly without knowing. 2. Your mind cannot tolerate contradiction, and it resolves the contradiction in their favor. This is the mechanism almost nobody understands. And it is the engine of the entire thing. When you hold 2 ideas that cannot both be true, your brain experiences genuine discomfort. Real, physical, measurable discomfort. It wants that resolved, and it wants it resolved now. So imagine you are holding these 2 ideas. This person cares about me, and this person just did something that hurt me badly. Those do not sit together. One of them has to move. Now, which one is easier to move? Believing they do not care about you means confronting the possibility that a relationship you have invested in, defended, built your routine around, is not what you thought it was. It means loss. It means having been wrong in public. It means a difficult conversation and possibly an ending. Believing you misread the situation costs you almost nothing. It requires no conversation. Nobody has to leave. You simply adjust yourself, quietly, internally, and the discomfort stops. Your mind will take that second option nearly every time, and it will take it automatically, without asking your permission. This is not a character flaw. This is standard equipment in every human being on the planet. The manipulator does not have to convince you of anything. They just have to create the contradiction and let your own brain do the work of protecting them. 3. You judge behavior by intention. They operate on effect. Ask yourself how you decide whether something was wrong. If you are like most people, you go looking for intent. Did they mean it? Were they trying to hurt me? If the answer is no, you file it under accident, and you move on, and you feel generous for having done so. Now understand what that gives away. It means that any behavior at all becomes acceptable the moment it is paired with a claim about intent. I did not mean it that way. You know I would never. That is not what I was trying to do. And just like that, the effect on you, which is the only part that is real and measurable, gets thrown out as evidence. Intent is invisible. It lives inside another person's head where you cannot check it. Building your entire defensive system on something unverifiable is like installing a lock that opens for anyone who says they have the key. Effect is not invisible. Effect is what actually happened to you. And I want to plant something here that we will come back to many times before this is over. You do not need to prove intent to be allowed to respond to effect. 4. You do not know a game is being played, and they have played it 1,000 times. This is the asymmetry that makes the whole thing so lopsided, and it is worth sitting with. You are in a conversation. You are being present, listening, responding honestly, taking what is said at face value, because that is what a conversation is. Meanwhile, the person across from you is running a sequence. They have used this exact move before. They know what you are likely to say. They know which of your 3 or 4 typical responses is coming, and they have prepared for each one. They are not being spontaneous. They are executing. That is not a fair fight, and it has nothing to do with your intelligence. A grandmaster does not beat you at chess because he is smarter than you. He beats you because he has seen this position 800 times and you are seeing it for the first time, which brings us to the shift. And this is the most important idea in this chapter. Stop asking yourself, am I being fair to this person? Start asking, what is the pattern producing? Fairness is the question that keeps you trapped, because fairness always has another side. And a manipulative person can always generate one more excuse, one more explanation, one more piece of context that makes this particular incident understandable. You will never reach the end of that. There is no bottom to it. You can spend a decade being fair, but a pattern cannot be argued with. A pattern is not about intent or character or who is a good person. A pattern is just arithmetic. Over the last 6 months in this relationship, what has actually happened to me? Am I more confident or less? Do I speak more freely or do I edit myself? Do I have more friends or fewer? Do I trust my own memory more or less than I did before I met this person? Those questions have answers, real ones, and no amount of explanation from the other side can change them, because they are not claims about anybody's character. They are just the score. Sit with that for a moment, because everything that follows in this audiobook is built on it. We are not going to try to read minds. We are going to read patterns. And patterns, unlike people, cannot lie to you. Chapter 2. The early signals. Almost everyone who has been through this describes the same thing afterward. It happened so gradually. I did not see it coming. One day, I looked up, and I did not recognize my own life. That description feels true, and it is almost entirely false. It was not gradual. It was staged. And the early stage is not subtle at all. Once you know what you are looking at, the signals are loud. They just arrive at a moment when you have no reason to be listening, wrapped in a package that looks like charm or intensity, or someone finally paying attention to you. So this chapter is about the beginning, the signals that show up in the first weeks, sometimes the first hours, long before there is any damage to point to. This is the cheapest place in the entire process to get out, and almost nobody uses it. The first signal is the small test. Very early on, a manipulative person will violate something minor. They will show up late without acknowledging it. They will make a joke that lands slightly wrong. They will ask for something a little larger than the relationship should support at that stage. They will push on a preference you stated and see if it holds. Now, on its own, every one of those things is nothing. Ordinary people do all of them by accident, constantly. That is precisely why it works. But watch what happens next, because this is the part that gives it away. After the small violation, they are watching you. Not the violation, you. They want to see what you do. Do you name it? Do you let it slide? Do you smile and make it easier for them? Do you apologize for being bothered? They are not testing whether you are a nice person. They are measuring with real precision how much a boundary costs them with you. If naming it costs them a difficult moment, they will recalibrate. If letting it slide costs you nothing, they now know exactly how far they can go. And the next violation will be slightly larger. This is why the advice to give people the benefit of the doubt is so dangerous at this exact stage. The benefit of the doubt is fine. Silent benefit of the doubt is a data point they will use. The second signal is intimacy that arrives too fast. Within an unusually short period, this person will tell you something heavy, a trauma, a secret, a family wound, something they say they have never told anyone, and you will feel two things simultaneously. You will feel moved, and you will feel chosen. Real intimacy is built. It goes back and forth. It accumulates. It is paced by mutual comfort. Manufactured intimacy is deployed. It arrives all at once, before there is any foundation to hold it. And it does something very specific to you. It creates obligation. Once someone has handed you their deepest wound in week 2, you cannot leave in week 3 without feeling like a monster. The disclosure was not vulnerability. It was a deposit. Here is the way to tell the difference. And it is reliable. After genuine vulnerability, both people feel slightly exposed. After manufactured vulnerability, only you do. The third signal is the information vacuum. Pay attention to the balance of a new relationship. A manipulative person will often be an extraordinary listener, at least at the start. They ask real questions. They remember details. They circle back to things you mentioned once. It feels wonderful because most people are not listened to properly, and you can feel the difference immediately. But run the accounting. After 10 conversations, how much do they know about you? Your history, your fears, your finances, your family conflicts, what you want, what you are ashamed of, who has hurt you before, and exactly how and how much do you actually know about them. Not stories, not intensity, verifiable, concrete, checkable facts. Where they were the last 3 years, who their long-term friends are, why the last relationship ended, in a version that involves them doing anything at all. If the flow of real information runs almost entirely one direction, you are not being loved. You are being surveyed. The fourth signal is urgency. Manipulation has a natural enemy, and that enemy is time. Given enough time, patterns emerge, stories stop matching, other people offer opinions, and the intensity fades enough for you to think clearly. So a manipulative person will, almost without exception, apply pressure to the clock. Let us not wait. Why do we need to think about it? If it is right, it is right. I do not want to lose this opportunity. Move in with me. Lend me this now. Decide tonight. The specific content varies. The structure never does. Any pressure to decide faster than you naturally would is the single most reliable early warning sign that exists. In romance, in business, in friendship, in every context there is. Honest people can wait. Their offer survives the delay. That is what makes it honest. The fifth signal is the flash. At some point in the early stage, you will see something that does not fit. A flicker of contempt when a waiter makes a mistake. A comment about an ex that is a shade too cold. A moment of irritation at you, out of proportion, gone in under a second, replaced immediately by warmth. And you will do what everyone does. You will file it as a bad moment. You will think, everyone has bad moments, and it would be unfair to judge a whole person on 1 second. I want you to hear this very clearly. That flash is not the exception. That flash is the only unedited footage you are ever going to get. Everything around it is presentation. For half a second, the effort dropped, and you saw what is actually underneath. And then the effort came back. You do not need to end anything over one flash, but you must never delete it. Write it down if you have to, because in 6 months, when things have gotten strange and you are trying to work out when it began, that flash is the first frame. The sixth signal is the body. Your nervous system will figure this out well before your mind will let itself. It has fewer commitments to protect, so watch for the physical tells. A small drop in your stomach when their name appears on your phone. Rehearsing a simple sentence before you say it to them, when you would never rehearse it for anyone else. Relief. Actual physical relief when they cancel plans. tension in your shoulders. After time together that you notice only once you are alone and it releases. That is data. That is not anxiety or your issues or you being difficult. Your body has been reading people since long before you had language for it, and it does not care about being fair. It just reports. Now, the shutdown for this entire stage is one sentence. It is unremarkable, it is completely socially acceptable, and it neutralizes almost every early manipulation there is. Let me think about it, and I will get back to you. That is it. Practice it until it is automatic, because that is the whole trick. You do not need to detect the manipulation in the moment. You do not need to know whether this person is dangerous. You only need to remove speed from the interaction, because nearly every early tactic requires a decision made under pressure before your judgment comes back online. And watch what happens when you say it. An ordinary person will say, "Of course, take your time," and mean it. A manipulative person will react to that sentence as though you have accused them of something. They will push, or they will get hurt, or they will explain why this particular situation is different and cannot wait. You just ran a test of your own. Notice how much it told you, and notice how little it cost. Chapter 3. Gaslighting. Of all the tactics in this audiobook, this is the one that does the deepest damage, because it does not attack your happiness or your confidence directly. It attacks the instrument you would use to measure either one. The word gets used loosely now. People say it about any disagreement. So, let us be precise, because precision is your weapon here. Gaslighting is not lying to you. Lying is a claim about the world. Gaslighting is a claim about your mind. Its purpose is not to make you believe a particular false thing. Its purpose is to degrade your confidence in your own perception until you begin to check reality against them instead of against yourself. That is the goal. Not the argument, the dependency. And it runs on a ladder, almost always the same one, in almost the same order. The first rung is the denial of small facts. It begins with things that barely matter. You say, "You told me you would be back by 7. They say, "No, I said around 8. You are fairly sure. But it was a passing comment. You were half listening. And it is genuinely possible you mixed it up. So you let it go, because who is going to fight about 7 versus 8? Understand that the content is irrelevant here. The purpose of this rung is to establish one thing, quietly, over and over, that when your memory and their memory disagree, theirs wins and nothing bad happens. The second rung is the denial of tone. Now it moves from facts to interpretation, which is far harder to defend. You say, "You snapped at me." They say, "I did not snap at you. I was just answering the question." And you cannot point to a transcript because tone leaves no evidence. It happened in the air, and then it was gone. You know what you heard, but knowing is not proof, and they know it is not proof. The third rung is the denial of your reaction. Here the target changes, and this is the rung where it starts to hurt. It is no longer about the event, it is about you. You are too sensitive. You always do this. You are looking for problems. Why do you have to turn everything into something? Notice the move. The conversation is no longer about whether they did the thing. It is now about whether you are the kind of person whose responses can be trusted, and you have been pulled into defending your own character while the original event quietly disappears from the room. It is never mentioned again. It does not need to be. The fourth rung is the denial of memory itself. That never happened. You are making things up. I do not know where you are getting this from. I am genuinely worried about you. At this rung, they are no longer offering a competing account. They are asserting that your recollection is generated, not recalled. And if you have climbed the first 3 rungs with them over the course of months, you are already primed. Some part of you has already learned that when there is a conflict, you are usually the one who was wrong. The 5th rung is recruitment. This is the final stage and the most isolating. They begin telling you what other people think. Your sister mentioned she is concerned about you. Everyone at work has noticed. I did not want to say this, but my friends find you exhausting. You cannot verify any of it. Checking would require you to go to those people and ask, which feels humiliating and slightly unstable, which is precisely the point. Now you are not just alone in the argument. You believe you are alone in the room. So why does something this crude actually work on intelligent adults? Because of one fact about the human mind that almost nobody is taught. Memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. Every time you recall something, you rebuild it. And it is genuinely vulnerable to influence during that rebuild. That is not a weakness specific to you. That is how memory works in every human being. Now add a second fact. When your own uncertain reconstruction meets another person's confident assertion, and that person is someone you have chosen to trust, confidence wins. Not because you are weak, because trust is supposed to work that way. You are supposed to be able to lean on the people close to you. Gaslighting is the exploitation of a system that is functioning correctly, which is exactly why it feels like going insane. You are not losing your grip on reality. You are outsourcing it, one small concession at a time, to someone who has an interest in the result. Now, how do you shut it down? The instinct is to argue the fact, to gather evidence, produce the message, prove that it was 7 and not 8. Do not do this. It feels powerful, and it is a trap because it accepts their frame, which is that reality is up for negotiation between the two of you, and whoever argues better gets to define it. And they will always be more willing to argue, because they are not constrained by having to be accurate. There are 3 moves instead. The first is external record. Keep contemporaneous notes. Not a case file, not a dossier. Just a running record with dates, a line or 2, written when it happens rather than reconstructed later. Do it privately. The purpose is not to win an argument. The purpose is to have one fixed point that cannot be edited during a conversation, so that when you are told something never happened, you have somewhere to stand that is outside their reach. The second is refusing the debate. You are not obligated to establish what happened to the other person's satisfaction. That is a trial you can never win because they are also the judge. The third is naming the pattern instead of the incident. Incidents are deniable. Patterns are not, because a pattern is your own experience of your own life, and there is no version of events that can take it from you. Here are the words. I am not going to debate what happened. I know what I heard. Say it calmly. Then stop talking. Do not add evidence. Do not soften it. Do not explain why you are sure, because every additional sentence is a new surface to attack. And if it continues, this. I notice that whenever I raise something, the conversation becomes about my memory. I am not doing that anymore. Watch what happens. Someone who genuinely misremembered will say, "All right, maybe I have it wrong." That is a normal human response, and it costs them nothing. Someone who was gaslighting you will escalate. They will become outraged that you would suggest such a thing, or wounded that you do not trust them, or they will pivot instantly to something you did wrong months ago. You have just been given your answer, not from their words, from the shape of their reaction. Chapter 4. Guilt and obligation. Guilt is the most efficient tool in the entire manipulative repertoire. And the reason is simple. It requires no enforcement. Once installed, you do the work yourself, indefinitely, without supervision. They do not have to make you comply. You will comply on your own and experience it as being a good person. To see it clearly, you have to understand what it is built on, which is one of the oldest instincts in human social life: reciprocity. When someone gives you something, you feel a pull to give back. That instinct is not naive. It is the foundation of cooperation, and it is the reason human societies function at all. But look at the loophole. The instinct fires based on receiving. It does not check whether you asked. And that gap is the entire tactic. There are 5 forms this takes, and they are worth knowing individually. The first is the unrequested favor. They do something for you that you did not ask for and may not have wanted. They handle something on your behalf. They buy something. They involve themselves in a problem you were managing. They rearrange their schedule for you without consulting you about it. In the moment, it looks like generosity, and refusing it feels ungrateful. So you accept. And now a debt exists that you never agreed to take on. This is the cleanest version of the tactic, because you cannot even object without appearing to punish kindness. The second is the ledger. This person remembers everything they have ever done for you. Everything. Not warmly, the way you might remember a good moment. Precisely, with dates and amounts, filed and retrievable. And it comes out during conflict, never during calm. You raise an issue about something they did last week, and suddenly you are hearing about the time they drove you to the airport 18 months ago, the money they lent you in the spring, the night they sat with you when you were falling apart. Notice what that does structurally. Your complaint has not been answered. It has been priced. You are being told that your right to object is limited by an outstanding balance, and that the balance is larger than the complaint. Real generosity does not keep records. It cannot, because it was not an investment. If someone can produce an itemized history of their kindness under pressure, it was never kindness. It was accumulation, and you were the account. The third is the sacrifice announcement. I gave up so much for you. I could have taken that job. I stayed when I did not have to. I have put my whole life on hold for this. The trap here is airtight. If the sacrifice was real, you owe them. If it was not real, you cannot say so without being cruel about something they have framed as their pain. Either way you lose, and either way the original conversation ends. And there is a quieter cost. You begin to carry responsibility for a choice you did not make. They decided. They took the action. but the weight of it has been transferred onto you, and you will carry it for years. The fourth is the gift with a hook. Something is given that is disproportionate, too expensive, too grand, too early in the relationship, or given publicly where refusing would be a scene. Watch for what happens afterward, because that is the tell. A real gift is complete when it is given. A hooked gift gets referenced. It comes up. It appears in later conversations as leverage, as evidence of their goodness, as the reason you should be more understanding. The fifth is the preemptive collapse. This one is subtle and it is devastating. Before you can raise something, they get there first with their own suffering. You are about to say, "I need to talk about what happened." And they say, "I have had the worst week of my life. I do not think I can take one more thing." Now your concern is an assault on someone who is already down. You put it away. You will put it away many times. And eventually you will stop bringing things at all. And they will never once have had to refuse you. So how do you know whether you are dealing with genuine generosity or a debt generation system? There is one clean question, and it works nearly every time. Did the giving stay separate from the asking? A generous person gives, and it ends there. What they give and what they want from you exist in different parts of their mind and never touch. A manipulative person gives, and the giving is the setup. The two are linked, and the link appears the moment they need something. You can also run a direct test if you want certainty. Accept the kindness warmly, and then decline something unrelated. Watch whether the kindness gets mentioned. It will not take long. Now, the shutdown. And this is the one that changes lives, because most people believe they have two options: comply or be ungrateful. And there is a third one that nobody teaches. You can accept gratitude and refuse compliance at the same time. They are separate. They have always been separate. You were simply raised to experience them as one thing. Here are the words: "I am grateful for that." This is a separate decision. That is the whole shutdown. 2 sentences. Notice what it does. It does not deny the kindness, which means there is nothing to argue with. It does not defend your refusal, which means there is nothing to negotiate. It simply cuts the wire between the two, and the entire tactic depends on that wire. If the ledger comes out, use this. I am not going to trade history. What I am asking about is what happened yesterday. And if you get the preemptive collapse, this: I hear that you are having a hard week. I still need 10 minutes for this, and we can do it tomorrow if tonight is not right. That last one is important because it does something the tactic cannot survive. It grants the sympathy in full and keeps the appointment. Preemptive collapse only works if your concern disappears in exchange for compassion. Once compassion and follow-through arrive together, the entire mechanism stops paying. Chapter 5. Love bombing. There is a specific kind of experience that almost everyone who has been badly manipulated describes. And it is not the pain. It is the beginning. They will tell you that the first weeks were the best of their life. Not good. The best. Unlike anything before or since. And here is the part that confuses people for years afterward. That was not a lie. It genuinely was extraordinary. That is exactly why it worked. Love bombing is the deliberate creation of an overwhelming positive experience at the start of a relationship. delivered at a speed and intensity that a real connection could not possibly sustain. And its purpose is not to make you happy. Its purpose is to install a reference point, because once you have experienced that peak, everything afterward is measured against it. And when the treatment gets worse, and it will, you will not read it as a person revealing their character. You will read it as something being wrong that needs to be fixed, and you will spend enormous effort trying to get back to a place that was never real to begin with. That is the whole design. It is not the honeymoon. It is the bait. And then it is the leash. And I want to be clear that this is not only romantic. It shows up in friendship, where someone declares you their closest person within a month. It shows up at work, where a new manager tells you in week 1 that you are the only competent person in the department and they are going to change your career. It shows up with mentors, coaches, communities, anywhere someone benefits from your loyalty arriving faster than your judgment. The signs are consistent. The first is praise that is disproportionate to information. They are enormously impressed by you, not by a specific thing you did that they observed and understood, but by you, comprehensively, immediately. You are the most interesting person they have met. You are different from everyone else. They cannot believe someone like you exists. Now, ask the question that dissolves this instantly. What do they actually know? You have had 4 conversations. They have not seen you under pressure, tired, wrong about something, or on a bad day. They have not met anyone who knows you well. The praise is not describing you, because there has not been enough time to describe you. It is describing a projection. And here is the sting in that. If the adoration was not based on knowing you, then the later contempt will not be based on knowing you either. Both are weather. The second is future faking. Very early, the conversation fills with a future. Trips you will take, where you will live, what you will build together, what it will be like in 5 years. It is specific and vivid, and it feels enormously reassuring because it seems to remove all uncertainty about where you stand, but nothing has been risked. Descriptions of the future are free. They cost nothing to produce, and they generate real commitment in you, which is the most favorable exchange rate in the world. Watch instead for what is done in the present at cost. That is the only currency that means anything. The third is speed of escalation. Exclusivity requested unusually early, meeting the important people in their life immediately, or being kept away from everyone. Keys, money, moving in, a business proposal, all arriving before the relationship has any history behind it. We covered urgency as a general signal, but here it has a particular function. Escalation creates entanglement, and entanglement creates cost of exit. By the time you begin to see the pattern clearly, leaving is no longer a decision about a person. It is a decision about your apartment, your finances, your social circle, your job. The fourth is constant contact, messages all day, calls when you are with friends, a subtle unhappiness when you are unreachable, expressed as missing you rather than as control. Because at this stage, it is much too early for control to be visible. The effect, though, is exactly the same as control. Your attention is fully occupied, There is no quiet in your day, and quiet is where perspective lives. Nobody notices a pattern while their phone is going. The fifth, and the most reliable of them all, is intensity without curiosity. This is the tell that catches almost every case. They are certain about you, but they are not curious about you. They make declarations rather than asking questions. They know already, and when you offer something that complicates their picture, a difficulty, a flaw, a limitation, it does not get absorbed. It gets waved away, or it visibly irritates them. Real interest asks. It updates. It wants the actual person, including the inconvenient parts. Love bombing wants a role filled, and it becomes impatient when you fail to stay in character. So here is the shutdown. And it is not a confrontation. Confrontation is exactly the wrong move here, because you have nothing yet. And accusing someone of insincerity on the basis of them being lovely to you will make you look unwell and hand them the moral position. The move is simply this: restore the clock. Manipulation of every kind requires momentum. Slow the pace, and one of two things happens, and both of them are excellent for you. Either the connection continues at a normal speed and turns out to be real, in which case you have lost nothing at all except a few weeks of intensity. Or the person cannot tolerate the slower pace and they leave, or they escalate, or they punish you for it, and you have just learned in a fortnight what would otherwise have taken you 2 years and a great deal of damage. Here are the words. I really like where this is going. I move slowly, and that is not going to change. Say it warmly. It is not a rejection, and it should not sound like one. Then hold 3 lines, quietly, without announcing them. Keep seeing your own people on your own schedule. Make no decisions with cost attached inside the first months. No money, no keys, no moving, no joint, anything. And keep at least one person in your life who knows the full story and whose opinion of it you are prepared to actually hear. Then just watch. Because a person who genuinely wants you will be perfectly fine with a slower pace. It will not even register as a problem because they are not working to a schedule. A person who was running a sequence will not be fine at all. They will find your caution hurtful. They will ask why you cannot just let yourself be happy. They will suggest that your last relationship has damaged you. They will interpret your ordinary, reasonable pace as a wound they are being punished for. And there it is. That is the answer, arriving weeks or months before it otherwise would have, at almost no cost to you, from a single sentence that made you sound nothing but kind. Chapter 6. The Hot and Cold Cycle. There is a question that people in these relationships ask constantly, and it is always the wrong question. Why is he different now? What changed? What did I do? The assumption buried inside that question is that the warmth was the real thing and the coldness is the malfunction, that somewhere there is a cause. And if you could locate it, you could fix it and return to how things were. I need you to consider a possibility that will be difficult, and that will also, eventually. They are 2 halves of one mechanism, and the mechanism only works because they alternate. This is the most powerful psychological hook that exists, and it is not a metaphor to say so. It is a measurable, well-documented fact about how minds learn. Consider 2 machines. The first one gives you a reward every single time you use it. Reliable, consistent, predictable. The second one gives you a reward sometimes. You cannot tell when. Sometimes 3 times in a row. Then nothing for a week. Then twice more. Which machine do you walk away from more easily? It is the first one, overwhelmingly. Because, with the consistent machine, you know where you stand. And the moment it stops paying, you understand immediately that it is broken, and you stop. The unpredictable machine is the one that will not let you go. When it stops paying, you cannot conclude anything, because it has stopped before and started again. Every unrewarded attempt feels like it is bringing you closer to the next payout. You cannot even quit, because quitting requires a moment of certainty, and uncertainty is the entire product. That is a slot machine. And it is also the structure of the relationship you may be in right now. Here is how the cycle runs. It begins with warmth, attention, affection, presence. Whatever this person's version of good is, you get it fully, and it is genuinely good. This is not fake, and that is what makes it so effective. Nobody stays for something fake, then it withdraws. Not with an argument. That is important. A fight would give you something to work with, something to resolve. Instead, the temperature simply drops. The messages get shorter. The warmth in their voice is gone. They are physically present and psychologically absent. And when you ask what is wrong, you are told nothing, or fine, or you are being paranoid. Then comes the phase that does the actual damage. And it is not their behavior. It is yours. You start working. You review the last few days, looking for what you did. You become more accommodating, more attentive, more careful. You apologize for things you are not sure you did. You perform. You make yourself easier to be around. Smaller, more pleasing. And you do all of this while carrying a low, steady dread in your chest. And then the warmth returns. Now, listen very closely, because this is the trap closing. Your brain, which is a pattern recognition machine and cannot help itself, draws a conclusion. It concludes that your effort caused the warmth to return, that you found the right combination, that the work paid. The warmth did not return because of anything you did. It returned because the cycle turns. It was always going to turn, but you will never know that from the inside, and so you have just been taught, at a level well below conscious thought, that anxiety plus effort produces love. Run that loop enough times, and something changes permanently in you. You stop experiencing love as warmth. You start experiencing it as relief. The absence of dread becomes the best feeling available to you, and a person who can generate dread now controls the only supply of that relief in your life. That is the whole engine, and it explains the thing that outsiders find impossible to understand, which is why people stay. They are not staying for the bad times, and they are not even really staying for the good ones. They are staying for the resolution. For the moment, the pressure lifts. Nobody on the outside can see that moment, and it is the most powerful experience in the relationship. There are a few variants worth naming. The purest form is the silent treatment. Contact withdrawn entirely, for hours or days, with no stated cause. It is often described as immaturity. Someone who needs space. Someone who is bad at confrontation. It is not. Withdrawal that comes with an explanation is space. Withdrawal with no explanation and no end date is a punishment with the reason deliberately withheld, because a stated reason could be addressed, and an unstated one keeps you working indefinitely. A second variant is the unnamed problem. You ask what is wrong, and you are told that if you do not know, they are not going to tell you. Now you are required to guess, which means you are required to search your own behavior for crimes, which means you will find some, because everyone can find some. You have been recruited to prosecute yourself. A third is the reset without repair. After a bad period, everything is suddenly lovely again, and no reference is made to what happened. Nothing was discussed. Nothing was resolved. And if you bring it up, you are told to stop dragging things up when everything is finally good. The lesson is that peace is available, but only on the condition that you never mention what broke it. So, how do you tell this apart from a person who simply has moods? Everyone has moods, and that is not manipulation. Two questions separate them cleanly. First, can you identify what causes the shift? With a person who has ordinary moods, you can usually connect it to something: work, sleep, health, a specific event. With this cycle, you cannot, and you will have spent months trying, and there is a reason you cannot. It is not being caused by anything you can see, because it is not a response. It is a rhythm. Second, and this is the more revealing one, does the cold phase ever appear in front of an audience? Watch that carefully. Moods do not check the room. A genuine bad mood is present at the family dinner, in front of the friends, when their boss calls. If the coldness reliably lifts when other people are watching and reliably returns when they leave, then it is not a mood. It is a behavior. Behaviors can be controlled. And this one is being controlled, which means it is being chosen. Now, the shutdown. And I will be honest with you that this one is the hardest in the book to execute, because it requires you to stop doing the thing that has been giving you relief. You have to break the connection between their withdrawal and your effort. That means during the cold phase you do not chase, you do not investigate, apologize preemptively, over-explain, perform, or work to earn the temperature back. And you do not punish either, because coldness in return is just a counter move in the same game, and it keeps you playing. You simply behave normally, warm, ordinary, unbothered, and entirely unavailable for guessing. You go about your day. You do the things you had planned. You are pleasant when addressed, and you do not fill the silence. Here are the words to use. I can see something is wrong. When you want to tell me what it is, I am here. I am not going to guess. Then go and live your evening. The first time you do this, it will feel almost unbearable. And I want you to be ready for that, so it does not surprise you into folding. There is a real physical discomfort involved, because you are interrupting a conditioned loop, and your nervous system will protest. It will tell you that this is dangerous, that the relationship is being lost, that you should just say sorry and make it stop. Hold anyway. Because what happens next is the most valuable information you will get about this person. If they were genuinely upset about something, they will tell you. Perhaps not immediately, but they will, because people who are hurt generally want the hurt addressed. If the withdrawal was a tool, it will escalate. The cold will deepen. It will extend. There may be a sudden crisis, or a dramatic accusation, or a new source of pressure, because the tool stopped working. and a stronger one has to be tried. And notice what that escalation is actually telling you. It is telling you that it was never about a feeling, it was about an outcome. Feelings do not escalate when you stop responding to them. Strategies do. Chapter 7. Isolation. Nobody has ever been told to stop seeing their friends. That is not how this happens. If someone said that outright, in plain language, in the second month, you would leave. Everyone would leave. It is far too obviously a violation, and manipulative people are, above all else, patient. What happens instead is that over the course of 2 or 3 years, your world quietly gets smaller, and every individual step in that process has a perfectly reasonable explanation, and at no point is there a single moment you could point to and call the moment it happened. This is the tactic that makes all the others possible, and I want you to understand why before we look at the methods. Everything you know about reality that you did not personally verify, you know socially. That is not a weakness. It is how human knowledge works. You check your perceptions against other people constantly, usually without noticing. You describe a strange conversation to a friend and watch their face. You mention something offhand at lunch and someone says, "Wait, he said what?" Other people are the instrument you use to calibrate your own judgment, and you have been using it your whole life. Isolation removes the instrument. Once you are alone with a manipulative person, their account of reality is the only account available to you. There is no second opinion. There is no friend's face to read. Gaslighting, which is difficult to sustain against someone with a full social life, becomes almost effortless against someone who has nobody left to describe it to. Here is how it is actually done. The first method is individual disqualification. They never criticize your friends as a category. They work through them one at a time, slowly, with what sounds like care. "I do not think she is a great influence on you. He was disrespectful to you and you did not even notice. I just get a strange feeling about them. I am probably wrong, but did you see how she looked at you when you said that?" Each observation is small. Each one is unfalsifiable. Each one gets deposited and left alone. And the cumulative effect over a year is that a slight discomfort now attaches to people who used to be simple pleasures. The second method is cost. Nobody forbids anything. You are simply charged for it. There is tension in the hours before you go out. Something difficult comes up, right as you are leaving. On your return, there is a coldness, or an interrogation dressed as interest, or a sudden crisis that consumed the evening while you were gone. Nobody has to prohibit a thing that reliably ruins your week. Within a few months, you find yourself declining invitations, and you experience this as your own choice. You will say you have not felt like going out much lately. You will believe it. The third method is becoming your interpreter. This one is subtle and extremely effective. They position themselves as the person who explains your other relationships to you. Your sister is jealous of you. Your friend only calls when she needs something. Your father has never respected you, and you are too kind to see it. Some of it may even be partly true, which is what gives it purchase. But the function is not accuracy. The function is to insert themselves between you and everyone else, so that all your relationships now run through their analysis. Eventually, you cannot have a simple interaction with anyone without hearing their commentary on it in your head. The fourth method is manufactured incidents. There is friction at the gathering, a comment that lands badly, a joke at your expense in front of your family, an argument in the car on the way there that means you arrive tense and leave early, a slow, steady accumulation of unpleasantness around exactly the events where you would be surrounded by people who love you. You start to associate seeing your people with stress, and so you see them less. And again, it will feel like your decision. The fifth method is the us frame. Nobody understands us. Your friends do not want you to be happy. Your family has never accepted me. It is you and me against all of it. This one is dangerous because it feels like intimacy. It feels like being on a team. But look at the actual structure of it. Every person outside the relationship has been reclassified as a threat to the relationship, which means loyalty to you now requires distance from them. You have not been isolated. You have been recruited into isolating yourself, and you will defend it. The sixth method is structural, and it is the hardest to reverse. Moving somewhere with no one you know. Merging finances so that leaving carries a price you cannot pay. Changing jobs, schedules, or routines so that the incidental contact that sustains friendships simply stops occurring. And then there is the accelerator that finishes the job, which nobody does to you. You do it yourself. It is shame. At some point, describing your life to someone who knows you becomes unbearable. Because to describe it honestly is to invite the question you cannot answer. So why are you still there? So you edit. You give the light version. You say things are fine. And then, because a friendship where you cannot say true things is exhausting, you contact them less. Not because you were forbidden, because it hurts. Understand that this is the point at which isolation becomes self-sustaining. And it is also the point at which most people stop being reachable by anyone who might help. So run the audit and be brutally honest, because this one is measurable in a way most of this material is not. Make a list of the people you were close to before this relationship began. Not acquaintances, the ones who mattered. Now, mark which of them you still speak to regularly and which have quietly faded. Then ask about each faded one. What actually happened? Not what is the explanation, because there is always an explanation. What happened? And ask the harder question. Is there anything happening in my life right now that I would not be comfortable describing in full to someone who loves me? That last one is the real diagnostic. And it is worth remembering for the rest of your life. Nothing healthy requires concealment from the people who care about you. Nothing. If your life has developed a version that gets told and a version that is true, something is very wrong. And the concealment is not protecting your relationship. It is protecting the tactic. Now, the shutdown. And I want to give you an order of operations here, because most people get this backwards and it costs them badly. Do not confront first. Reconnect first. The instinct is to have the big conversation. Name what has been happening. Demand it change. And people who do that while completely isolated tend to lose, because they are attempting a confrontation with no support, no external validation, and nowhere to go afterward if it turns bad. You need ground under your feet before you push. So the first move is one person, not 5. 1. Someone from before. Someone whose judgment you trusted. someone you have drifted from. And here is the part that stops people. So let me remove it now. You do not owe them an explanation for the silence. You do not have to account for the last 2 years or apologize for disappearing. The people who genuinely care about you do not require a report. They will simply be glad you called. The words are as small as this: I have been thinking about you. I would like to see you. That is all. No confession, no summary, no justification. Just a door reopened. And if you meet resistance at home, which you may, hold this line without negotiating it. I am not going to justify my friendships. Do not defend the individual person. Do not argue about whether your friend is a good influence, because that is a debate specifically designed to be endless. Refuse the category of conversation entirely. One last thing, and it matters. If someone from your old life has been trying to reach you and you have been avoiding them out of shame, understand what that shame actually is. It is not evidence that you did something stupid. It is a symptom of the isolation itself, manufactured to keep you exactly where you are. The embarrassment you feel about picking up the phone is not yours. It was installed. Make the call anyway. The discomfort lasts about 4 minutes. The isolation, if you let it stand, lasts years. Chapter 8. Weaponized Victimhood. Here is a sequence you may recognize so precisely that it is uncomfortable to hear described. You have something to raise. Not an accusation, not an attack. Something that hurt you, and you have thought carefully about how to say it, possibly for days. You choose a calm moment. You keep your voice low. You use the gentlest possible wording, and somewhere around 4 minutes later, you are comforting them. You are reassuring them that you do not think they are a bad person. You are apologizing for the timing, for the tone, for bringing it up at all. The thing that happened to you has vanished completely from the conversation, and it will never be mentioned again by anybody. Nothing was denied. Nothing was even argued, and yet the concern is gone, and you feel obscurely guilty. And you make a quiet, internal note not to do that again. This is the tactic that ends complaints permanently, and it does it without ever addressing a single one. It runs in 3 moves. The first move is denial, but a soft one, not a flat contradiction, which would give you something to push against. Something slipperier. I do not think that is what happened. That is not how I remember it. I never meant anything like that. Notice it is not really a claim about events. It is an opening bid, and its purpose is to make you restate your case, which puts you in the position of the prosecutor. You are now the one making the argument. You are now the one with a burden of proof. The second move is the pivot to your character. The subject changes from what they did to how you are doing it. Why are you bringing this up now? You always do this when things are going well. You have been looking for a fight all week. You are being so aggressive right now. I cannot believe you would accuse me of that. Watch the substitution carefully, because it is the hinge of the entire tactic. Your complaint has not been answered. It has been reclassified as an attack. And once it is an attack, they are permitted a defense, and defenses are emotional, and emotions outrank topics. The third move is the collapse. Their distress arrives. And it arrives at a scale that makes yours irrelevant. By comparison, tears, a voice breaking, withdrawal into apparent devastation, or the line that ends every conversation it touches, some version of, "I guess I am just a terrible person then. I guess you would be better off without me." And now consider what has been done to the room. There is only space for one person's pain at a time. Theirs is louder, more visible, more immediate. Yours was a description of something that happened last Tuesday. Theirs is happening in front of you, right now. And you are the apparent cause of it. Your empathy is real. That is the thing to hold on to here. Your empathy is not a defect, and it is not a mistake. It is genuinely one of the best things about you, and it is being used as a switch. There is a version of the collapse that goes further, and I want to address it directly rather than leave you without guidance. Sometimes the distress escalates into a suggestion that they cannot go on, or that something terrible will happen to them if you leave or if you keep pushing. Handle that seriously, and handle it in exactly one way. Treat it as a genuine emergency, and route it to people qualified to respond. A doctor, a crisis service, a professional, family who can actually be present. Do not take it on privately. Do not become the only thing standing between another adult and a catastrophe, because that is a load no person can carry and no relationship can survive. And notice something important about doing it that way. Taking it seriously and taking it on yourself are two entirely different responses. Involving people who are qualified is the caring response, and it is also the response that removes the leverage, because someone who genuinely needs help receives help, and someone who was using those words to end a conversation discovers that the words now produce consequences instead of compliance. So how do you know whether you are dealing with real hurt or a tactic? Because people do get genuinely upset when they are criticized, and that is not manipulation. That is being human. Do not try to read their sincerity. You cannot, and the attempt will keep you stuck for years. Count outcomes instead. Over the last year, when you raised something that bothered you, how did it end? Not once, over the whole year. What is the distribution? If a meaningful proportion ended with something being acknowledged, adjusted, or even just heard, you are in a normal relationship with a defensive person, which describes most people alive. If nearly every instance ended with you apologizing, comforting, or dropping it, then something is not happening by accident. That is not a person who struggles with criticism. That is a mechanism that converts your complaints into your apologies, and mechanisms that reliable are not emotional accidents. Here is the other tell. A genuinely upset person eventually comes back to the subject. Perhaps a day later, perhaps awkwardly, but they return to it because they care that something is wrong between you. A tactic never returns. Once the complaint is neutralized, it is finished, and the silence afterward is total. Now, the shutdown, and this one is elegant, because it costs you nothing and it cannot be argued with. The tactic depends on one hidden assumption, which is that their emotion and your topic cannot both survive the conversation, that you must choose. Either you press on and become the kind of person who ignores someone crying, or you drop it and be kind. Refuse the choice, grant the emotion completely, and keep the topic completely. Here are the words. I can see you are really upset. I do not want to talk about this while you are feeling like that. Let us come back to it tomorrow, then stop. Be kind. Do not press further. Let the evening be gentle, and then tomorrow, come back to it. That second part is the entire technique. and almost nobody does it. Everyone grants the emotion. Nearly nobody keeps the appointment. The tactic does not survive an appointment being kept, because its whole function is to make the subject disappear, and a subject that reliably returns 24 hours later has not disappeared. If the collapse comes, the specific line that ends conversations: do not reassure and do not attack. Decline the frame: I did not say you were a terrible person. I said, this specific thing hurt me, and I still need to talk about it. And when tomorrow comes and you raise it again and are met with, I thought we were past this, hold the simple truth: we did not resolve it. We postponed it. I am ready now. You will notice something the first time you do this. There is nothing to push against. You have not accused. You have not escalated. You have not been unkind. And you have not gone away. That combination is something this tactic has no answer for, because every response it has ever needed was a response to your retreat. Chapter 9. Contempt in disguise. There is a particular kind of damage that never leaves a mark you can point to, and it is done almost entirely through things that are, individually, too small to mention. That is not a side effect. That is the specification. Each one is engineered to sit just underneath the threshold at which a reasonable person would object, because the objection is where the real work gets done. Every time you consider raising one of these and decide that it would make you look petty, the tactic has succeeded twice. Once for the hit, and once for teaching you that this whole class of thing is not raisable. There are 6 forms, and you should know each of them. The first is the joke. Something cutting is said about you, and then, immediately, the frame arrives. I am kidding. Relax. You know I love you. Do not be so sensitive. Look at the structure. Because it is beautifully built. The insult is delivered in full and lands in full. The disclaimer removes all responsibility for it. And the accusation of sensitivity means that if you react at all, you have confirmed the very flaw the joke implied. There is no available response that does not cost you something. The tell is direction and aim. Real teasing goes both ways, and it tends to be about something incidental. Contempt in a joke goes one way only, and it lands consistently in the same place. Usually, the exact thing you are most insecure about. That is not a coincidence. Nobody finds your deepest insecurity by accident 6 times in a row. The second is criticism laundered as care. I'm only telling you this because I love you. I am the only one who will be honest with you. I am saying this for your own good. The preface does something specific. It converts an attack into a service, and it makes gratitude the only acceptable response. If you are hurt, you are shooting the messenger. If you object, you are proving that you cannot handle honesty. Here is how to tell caring honesty from the counterfeit. Real honesty is offered rarely, delivered privately, and concerns something you can actually change. The counterfeit is frequent, tends to appear when you are already doing well or feeling confident, and concerns things you cannot change at all. Watch the timing, especially. If the honest feedback about your appearance, your abilities, or your prospects tends to arrive shortly after something good has happened to you, then it is not feedback. It is regulation. The third is the compliment with a hook. You look amazing tonight. You have finally lost that weight. That was a really good presentation. I did not think you had it in you. You are so much more confident than when we met. Every one of those contains a wound, and the wound is installed underneath a positive statement, which means it cannot be extracted without you appearing to reject a compliment. And there is a second effect worth understanding. It plants a comparison you did not previously hold. You were fine before you walked in. Now there is a former version of you that was worse. And you have been informed that this person has been keeping track. The fourth is the public downgrade. Small corrections in front of other people. The affectionate eye roll while you are telling a story. The funny anecdote about your failure told at dinner that everyone laughs at, including you, finishing your sentences with a slightly different meaning than the one you were building toward. This one does something the private versions cannot. It recruits an audience. Once other people have laughed, the framing is socially confirmed, and you cannot object without becoming the person who cannot take a joke at their own dinner table. You will laugh along. Everyone does. And then you will feel strange on the drive home and not be able to explain why. The fifth is comparison. My ex never had a problem with this. Most people would just let this go. Everyone else manages it fine. The function is to establish that your reaction is outside the normal range, which means your feelings are a defect rather than information. And the comparison is always to someone unavailable for comment. The sixth is the withheld reaction. And this is the quietest of them all. Something good happens to you. A promotion, a piece of praise, a thing you made and are proud of. And it gets nothing. Not criticism, a flat pleasantness, a change of subject, a question about something practical. An absence exactly where the warmth should be. There is nothing to object to, because nothing occurred. But you will feel it. And after enough repetitions, you will do something without ever deciding to. You will stop bringing your good news home. That is the outcome all 6 of these are working toward. And it is worth stating plainly, the purpose of disguised contempt is not to hurt you in any particular moment. It is to gradually reduce the number of things you are willing to say out loud. So run the check. It is not about incidents, because individually none of them will survive examination. Ask instead, have I started editing myself? Do I run a sentence through a filter before I say it to this person? Is there good news I would rather share with someone else first? Do I have a small physical reaction, a bracing, when I say something to them that I am pleased about? If yes, then it does not matter whether any individual comment was innocent. The cumulative effect is measurable, and the cumulative effect is the thing that is actually happening to your life. Now, the shutdown, and it is the shortest one in this entire audiobook. Do not argue about whether it was a joke. That debate is unwinnable by design, and it is exactly where they want the conversation to go, because it converts a clear feeling into a murky dispute about intent. Instead, ask for the repetition. Sorry, say that again. I did not catch it. That is it. Neutral tone. Genuine curiosity. No edge at all. Understand why this is so effective. Every one of these tactics depends on momentum. The remark is delivered lightly. The room moves on. The meaning is absorbed without being examined. Asking for a repeat stops the room, and now they must either repeat the words in cold air, without the cover of flow, in front of whoever is present, or they must retreat. Both are excellent for you. Repeated slowly and deliberately, these remarks sound exactly as unpleasant as they are, and everyone present hears it, including them. That is why in practice, they almost never repeat it. They say it was nothing, and they move on, and they have learned that this does not run smoothly with you anymore. If you want the direct version, for when you are alone and it has happened repeatedly, this is the whole of it. I do not like that. I am not going to debate whether it was a joke. 2 sentences, and note what the second one does. It closes the only exit the tactic has. You have not accused them of cruelty which they could deny. You have stated a preference which cannot be disproved, and then declined the argument that normally follows. There is no counter to that. There is only compliance or escalation, and either one tells you what you needed to know. Chapter 10. The Language Games. You have had this conversation. You know you have. It lasted an hour and a half. You went in with one clear, simple thing you wanted to discuss. You came out drained, somehow apologizing, and completely unable to say what had actually been decided. If someone had asked you an hour later what the conversation was about, you would not have been able to tell them. That is not you being bad at arguing. That is a set of specific techniques, and once you can name them, you will start spotting them mid-sentence, which changes everything about how these conversations go. The first is the moving goalpost. An objection is raised. You address it. A new objection appears in its place. You address that one. A third arrives. The critical thing to notice is that the first objection is never revisited. It is not conceded. It is not withdrawn. It simply vanishes as though it was never the point. And this can continue indefinitely, because generating a new objection costs almost nothing while satisfying one costs you real effort. You are not in a discussion. You are on a treadmill, and the treadmill has no end because it was not built to have one. The second is word salad. You ask something specific and receive an enormous amount of language in return. Long, complex, emotionally intense, apparently substantive, and completely impossible to summarize. There are references to past events, tangents, contradictions that pass by too fast to catch, and by the end, you have lost your original question entirely. This is volume used as a weapon. And here is how to know for certain that you are experiencing it rather than just failing to follow. Try to write down in one sentence what they said. If you cannot, that is not a comprehension failure on your part. Clear thinking can always be summarized. Language that cannot be reduced to a sentence was usually not built to communicate anything. The third is deflection. You raise something they did. They respond with something you did. Often something from a long time ago. Often something unrelated. And here is the trap. Whatever they raise may be legitimate. You may genuinely have done that thing. So you feel obliged to address it. And the moment you do, your original subject is gone. It will not come back. You have just traded a live concern for an old one and paid full price. The fourth is the non-apology, and it is worth learning to recognize instantly because it is everywhere. I am sorry you feel that way. I am sorry if you were upset. I am sorry, but you have to understand where I was coming from. I am sorry that you took it like that. Test each of them. What is being apologized for? In every case, the object of the apology is your reaction not their action. You have received the sound of an apology and the substance of a complaint about your sensitivity. And if you point that out, you will be told that you are impossible to apologize to. A real apology has 3 parts, and it is easy to check. It names the specific thing that was done. It acknowledges the effect it had. It states what will be different. If those 3 are absent, nothing was apologized for. The 5th is selective precision. You describe something imprecisely because you are a human being speaking naturally, and one word gets seized. You said always. Well, not always. Here is an occasion when I did not. So the statement is false. One imperfect word is used to void the entire concern. It is a technicality applied to an emotional conversation, and it is deployed by people who are perfectly capable of understanding what you meant. The 6th is the unanswerable question. Why are you like this? What is wrong with you? Why do you always have to do this? These look like questions and are not questions. They have no answers. Their only function is to reposition you as a subject under examination, and you will feel the pull to respond, because a question in your direction demands one. The 7th is definition drift. The terms of the conversation change while it is happening. You agreed to something, but what you agreed to has quietly become larger. A word you both used at the start now means something different at the end. And if you notice, you are told that you are being pedantic. Now, why do all of these work on intelligent people over and over? Because you and they are not playing the same game, and you do not know it. You entered the conversation to resolve something. Resolution is your win condition. That means you will keep engaging, keep clarifying, keep trying to be understood, because every one of those feels like progress toward the thing you came for. They entered to end the conversation without conceding anything. Exhaustion is their win condition, which means every minute that passes without resolution is a minute they are winning. And your persistence is not pressure on them at all. It is fuel. You cannot win a game where your opponent scores points every time you try harder. Here is the tell, and it is the most reliable diagnostic in this chapter. After the conversation, can you state what was agreed? If you can describe how you felt but not what was decided, then nothing was decided, and that was the outcome the conversation was designed to produce. So here is the shutdown, and it has 3 parts. The first is the single sentence. Before you begin, decide the one thing you are there for and reduce it to a sentence you can repeat. Not a case. Not a list of examples, because every example is a new surface for attack. 1 sentence. The second is the refusal to chase. Whatever is thrown, you do not follow it. You acknowledge that it exists, and you return. That is a separate subject. I am willing to talk about it another time. Right now, I am asking about this one thing. You may have to say that 4 or 5 times. Say it the same way each time, without irritation and without additional argument. It should be boring. Boring is the point, because the technique relies on you generating new material to attack, and repetition gives it nothing to work with. The third is naming the structure, not accusing them of a motive, which is deniable, but describing the shape of the conversation, which is not. I notice that every time I raise this, we end up talking about something else. And for the apology, if you want to close that door properly, this. That is not an apology for what happened. That is an apology for my reaction. What I need to hear is that you understand what you did. Then, the last piece, and the one that changes the most. Give yourself permission to end conversations. You have been taught that walking away from a discussion is a failure, or rude, or a sign you have lost. It is none of those. A conversation whose purpose is your exhaustion has no natural conclusion, and the only way it ends well for you is if you end it. I am not getting anywhere with this tonight. I am going to stop here. Then stop. Not as a punishment, not with a slammed door, and not with a final wounding line on the way out. Simply out. The first time you do this, you will feel like you have lost. You have not. You have just refused to keep playing a game whose only prize was being too tired to remember what you came in for. Chapter 11. Manipulation at work. Everything you have learned so far applies at work. But the environment changes the game in 3 ways. And you need to understand all 3 before the tactics will make sense. The first is that you cannot simply leave. In a friendship, you can drift. In a relationship, you can end it. At work, there is rent, there is a mortgage, there is a visa, there is a reference you will need, and everybody involved knows it. That is a form of leverage that does not exist anywhere else in your life. The second is that there is an official power gradient, and it is legitimate. Your manager is genuinely allowed to direct your work, evaluate you, and change your priorities, which means manipulation at work can hide inside authority that is real, and questioning the behavior looks like questioning the role. The third works entirely in your favor, and most people never use it. Work is documented. It runs on email, messages, calendars, systems, tickets, and records. This is the one arena where you have an external memory that cannot be edited during an argument. And once you understand that, most workplace manipulation becomes almost trivially defeatable. Here are the forms it takes. The first is ambiguity as control. You are given a task without a clear definition of success. What is wanted is vague. The standard is unstated. The deadline is described as soon as possible. Then whatever you produce is not quite it. And it cannot be, because the target was never fixed. The most valuable thing about a vague instruction to a person who wants leverage over you is that it makes any outcome available for criticism after the fact. Notice that a genuinely disorganized manager also does this. That distinction matters, and we will come back to it. The second is credit and blame routing. Your work travels upward without your name attached. Their errors travel downward and land somewhere near you. In the meeting, the successful project becomes something the team achieved, and the failed one becomes something that happened in your area. Watch the direction over months rather than incidents. Everybody occasionally forgets to credit someone. Nobody accidentally does it in the same direction 30 times. The third is manufactured urgency. Everything is a fire. Everything is needed now. There is never a moment of calm in which to check anything. Understand the function. Urgency is the enemy of verification. A person in a permanent state of emergency does not have time to ask why, to compare this instruction to last week's, to notice that the priorities have quietly reversed, or to write anything down. Chronic urgency is not always a symptom of a busy business. Very often, It is the mechanism that keeps you from thinking. The fourth is the verbal-only instruction. The important things are said to you in the corridor, at your desk, on a call, never in writing. And when it goes wrong, the account of what was asked for is different from what you remember. This is deniability engineering, and it is the most common form of workplace manipulation there is. Somebody who always writes things down for other people and never for you has told you something. The fifth is access control. You are the last to know. You are left off the invitation, then criticized for not being aligned. Information you need in order to do the work arrives late or incomplete, and then the resulting problem is attributed to your judgment. You cannot perform well while being deprived of what performance requires, which is precisely the point. It builds a record of underperformance that looks objective to anyone reading it later. The sixth is false intimacy. This one is underestimated, and it is extremely effective. A manager confides in you, tells you things about other colleagues, says you are the only one they can rely on, treats you as an ally rather than a report. It feels wonderful. It also converts every professional disagreement into a personal betrayal. Once you are their confidant, declining an unreasonable request is no longer a boundary. It is letting a friend down, and you have been handed information about colleagues that quietly separates you from them. The seventh is the review ambush. Nothing is raised all year. Not one conversation, not one correction, not one difficult moment. And then a formal document appears, containing months of accumulated concerns that were never mentioned to you. The absence of feedback at the time is the tell. Real performance management happens in real time because the purpose is to change the outcome. Feedback stored up and released all at once was not intended to help you improve. It was intended to build a case. The eighth is the team player lever. Every unreasonable request arrives wrapped in identity. We all pull together here. I thought you were committed. Everyone else is making sacrifices. The request itself is never defended on its merits because it could not survive that. Instead, refusing it is made into a statement about the kind of person you are. Now, before the defense, the distinction that will keep you sane: most workplaces are not malicious. Most are simply chaotic. Ambiguous instructions, shifting priorities, urgent nonsense, and forgotten credit are the ordinary weather of organizations run by tired people with too much to do. Here is how you separate chaos from targeting. Chaos is universal. Targeting is selective. So watch how the same manager behaves toward everybody else. Does everyone get vague instructions? Or only you? Does everyone get the corridor briefing while others get theirs in writing? Do other people's mistakes get absorbed into general circumstances while yours get a name attached? Chaos does not choose. If the pattern has a favorite, it is not chaos. Now, the defense. And the good news is that it is largely one habit. Put it in writing, always, without ever making it a confrontation. This is the single most powerful move available to you in any workplace. And its beauty is that it looks like nothing but diligence. Nobody can object to it. It is exactly what a conscientious person does. Here are the words for the corridor instruction. Happy to take that on. Could you drop me an email with the details so I get it exactly right? If that is inconvenient, you send it instead, just to confirm what we agreed. I am doing this by this date, and it comes ahead of the other piece. Let me know if I have any of that wrong. Then notice what has happened. That message is now a fact. If the requirement changes later, the change is visible. If it goes wrong, the instruction exists, and you have not accused anybody of anything. You have simply made the conversation permanent. For ambiguity, ask the question that removes it. What does finished look like for this? If it lands perfectly, what is in it? For competing priorities, refuse to absorb the conflict silently. I can do that. If it comes first, then one of the other two has to move. Which would you like me to push? That sentence is worth learning by heart because it hands the trade-off back to the person who created it, in writing, politely, with no possible objection. For the review ambush, the response is not outrage. It is the calm question. I want to take this seriously. Can you help me understand why none of it was raised at the time, so I can catch it earlier in future? And keep your own record. Not a dossier and not a grievance file. A short, factual log with dates. What was asked, when, by whom, and what changed. Written the day it happens, rather than reconstructed from memory 6 months later. Because reconstruction is exactly where you lose. Finally, know the escalation route before you need it. Who you would speak to, what the process is, what would be expected of you, not because you intend to use it, but because a person who knows their options behaves differently, and other people can always tell. Chapter 12. Verifying the pattern. Now we reach the point where most people ruin their own case. And I want to stop you before you do it. You have been listening to this audiobook and recognizing things. Chapter after chapter, something has landed. And by now there is a name in your head and a rising urge to go and say all of it out loud tonight. Do not because you are wrong. You may be entirely right, but manipulation is a pattern. And a pattern cannot be proven with a single incident, and an accusation you cannot support hands the whole advantage back to the person you are confronting. Think about what happens if you go in tonight with one example. That example has an explanation. Every individual incident does, and that is the entire design. So you present it, it gets explained, and now you have spent your credibility. Worse, you have shown your hand. They know that you have language for what they do. And everything afterward will be more careful, more deniable, and considerably harder to see. You get one first move. Make it from solid ground. So here is how you verify. There are 3 tests. The first test is frequency, not did this happen? Does this happen? Once is an event, and everybody produces bad events. What you are looking for is the recurrence of a structure, not of a detail. The specific incidents will look different from each other. The shape will not. The second test is direction. And this is the strongest of the 3 by a wide margin. Ask one question about every incident on your list. Who did it benefit? Because here is the thing about genuine mistakes. Misunderstandings, bad moods, poor communication, and forgetfulness. They are random. They land in every direction. Sometimes an honest error costs the other person, and sometimes it costs you, because that is what randomness looks like. Manipulation has a direction, The forgetting is always of things you were owed. The misunderstanding always resolves in their favor. The bad mood always arrives on evenings you had plans. The generosity always precedes a request. If you lay 20 incidents side by side and the benefit lands on the same side 18 times, you are not looking at a person who is careless. Carelessness does not aim. The third test is the response to being named. Take one small, recent, clear thing and name it neutrally. No accusation, no history, no theory about their character. Just the specific behavior and the effect it had. When you said that at dinner, it embarrassed me. Then watch. Because the reaction will tell you more than the answer does. An ordinary person who did something careless does one of a few normal things. Apologizes, gets briefly defensive, and then comes round. Explains. Then acknowledges. What they do not do is turn it into a referendum on your character, or collapse, or produce a list of your historical crimes, or deny that the moment occurred at all. A tactic escalates. And notice what that means. You have just learned more from one neutral sentence than from 6 months of analysis, and it cost you almost nothing. Now, the record. Keep notes as things happen, and keep them factual. This matters more than people realize. Write what was said and what occurred. Do not write what it meant, what you suspect, or what kind of person you think they are. There are 2 reasons. The first is that interpretations decay and facts do not. In 4 months, you will not trust your own conclusions, but you will trust a line that says, "On the 14th, he said, the money was never discussed." The second is that a factual record is something you could show another person. An interpretive one only makes you look like somebody who has been building a case, and that changes how all of it reads. Then, the outside view. Choose one person whose judgment you respect and who has no stake in the outcome. Tell them the whole thing, not the edited version, not the version that protects your dignity, and not the version that protects the other person. And here is the difficult part, which almost everyone skips. You have to be genuinely willing to hear that you are wrong. Because if you only tell the story to people who will agree with you, you have not sought a second opinion. You have manufactured one, and you are now doing to yourself the very thing this audiobook is about. Now, the trap that keeps people stuck for years, and I want to name it precisely, you are waiting for certainty. Somewhere in you is the belief that at some point you will have enough. A moment so clear, an incident so undeniable, that you will finally know for sure and be permitted to act. That moment is not coming. It almost never does. There will be no confession, no admission, no single piece of evidence that resolves everything. And waiting for it is not diligence. It is a way of postponing a decision that frightens you, and it can consume a decade of your life. So replace certainty with a threshold. Sit down at a calm moment, when nothing is happening and you are thinking clearly, and decide in advance. If this specific thing happens again, I will do this specific thing. Write it down somewhere, you will find it. The reason this works is simple, and it is the most practical idea in this chapter. Your judgment during an incident is not reliable. That is not an insult. It is true of every human being under emotional pressure, and it is doubly true when someone is actively working on you. So, you make the decision when you are capable of making it. And in the moment, your only job is to carry out something you already decided. One last distinction, because it will save you from damaging relationships that did not deserve it. There is a difference between a difficult person and a manipulative one, and it is not their behavior in the bad moment. Difficult people can be defensive, sharp, avoidant, or hopeless at conflict, and they can do real damage without any intent at all. The difference is repair. Difficult people repair. Not always well, not always quickly, sometimes clumsily 2 days later. But they come back to it. They notice the distance between you. They want the thing fixed because the relationship matters to them more than the position does. Manipulation never repairs. It resets. There is no acknowledgement, no return, no reference to what happened. There is simply a sudden restoration of normal service, on the unspoken condition that nobody mentions it. Watch for repair over the next month. It will tell you more than any list of warning signs ever could. Chapter 13. The Shutdown Toolkit. This is the chapter the title promised. And before I hand you the tools, I have to give you the 3 principles that make them work. Without these, the words are just phrases, and you will use them badly. The first principle. You do not need their agreement. This is the one that changes everything. And almost nobody starts here. You have been operating as though the resolution requires them to understand, admit, or accept something. It does not. Every tool in this chapter is built to work on a person who never concedes a single point. That is the design specification, not a limitation. The second principle. You are not trying to win, change them, or be understood. You are trying to change what the tactic produces. That is all. Manipulation continues because it works, and it stops when it stops working. You are not conducting a moral education. You are adjusting an incentive. The third principle. Calm is the weapon. Anger feels powerful, and it is the worst available move because it hands over the one thing the tactic needs, which is a version of events in which you are the unreasonable one. If you shout, then within a day, the story is that you shouted, and everything you were trying to raise has been replaced by the manner in which you raised it. Flat, warm, quiet, and immovable is what they cannot handle, not loud. Now, the tools. The first tool is the pause. Let me think about it and I will get back to you. 9 words that will defeat most of the manipulation attempted on you for the rest of your life, because nearly every tactic requires a decision made under pressure. Use it for anything you did not initiate. Use it even when you already know your answer. Because using it only when you are suspicious tells people exactly when you are suspicious. The second tool is the repeated sentence. You reduce your position to one sentence and you repeat it, unchanged, in the same tone, however many times it takes. You do not improve it. You do not add examples. You do not respond to whatever came back. I understand. My answer is still no. This is close to unbeatable, and here is why. Every technique in the last several chapters requires new material from you in order to work. Deflection needs a new subject. Moving goalposts needs your next attempt. Word salad needs your engagement. A single, unchanging sentence starves all of them at once. It will feel rude. It is not rude. It is only unusual. The third tool is naming the structure. Never accuse a motive, because motives are invisible and deniable, and you will lose that argument every time. Describe the shape instead, which is simply your own observation and cannot be disproved. I notice that every time I bring this up, we end up talking about something I did. Every time I raise a concern, the conversation becomes about my tone. That is, the sentence manipulation cannot survive in the open. And you already know why. These tactics need to be invisible, described out loud, calmly, without accusation. They simply stop being usable in front of you. The fourth tool is the repeat request. Sorry, say that again. I did not catch it. For everything delivered as a joke, an aside, or a light comment. It removes the momentum and makes them say the words in cold air. The fifth tool is separating gratitude from compliance. Thank you. That is a separate decision. For everything built on debt, obligation, and the ledger. You accept the kindness fully and decline the invoice, and because you have not disputed the kindness, there is nothing there to argue with. The sixth tool is the appointment. I can see you are upset. Let us come back to this tomorrow. And then, and this is the entire tool, you come back to it tomorrow. Grant the emotion completely. Keep the topic completely. The seventh tool is the written confirmation, just to confirm what we agreed. For work, for money, for anything with a deadline or an obligation attached. It converts memory, which can be contested, into record, which cannot. The eighth tool is reducing your emotional yield. For situations you cannot leave and do not want a real relationship inside. A colleague, an ex who shares custody, a relative you see 4 times a year. You become boring. Short answers, no detail, no emotion offered, pleasant and flat. This is not for people you love and want to keep, because it is a form of withdrawal and it will slowly kill a real relationship. Use it as containment, never as a way of living. The ninth tool is the exit. I am not getting anywhere with this tonight. I am going to stop here. Then actually stop. No parting shot, no final wounding line, no slammed door. The exit only works if it is clean, because a dramatic one gives them the entire conversation to talk about instead of the subject. The 10th tool is the most important thing in this audiobook, and it is the one people get wrong most often. A boundary is not a rule for their behavior. It is a statement about yours. Listen to the difference. Because it is everything. You need to stop speaking to me like that. That is a request. It requires their cooperation in order to function, which means you have handed enforcement of your own limit to the person who is violating it. If they decline, you have nothing left. Now this one, if you speak to me like that, I am going to leave the room. That is a boundary. It does not require their agreement, their understanding, or their permission. It works whether they respect you or not, because the only person who has to act is you. Every real boundary has that shape. Not, you must stop. Instead, if this happens, here is what I will do. And there is one absolute rule attached to it. Never state a consequence you are not fully prepared to carry out calmly the very first time. A single unenforced consequence does more damage than never having set one at all, because you have just taught them that your limits are announcements rather than facts. So, state small ones. A small consequence you always follow through on is infinitely more powerful than a large one you never do. Now, delivery. Because the same words succeed or fail depending on how they leave your mouth. Keep your voice low and level. Not cold, just level. Keep it short. Every extra sentence is another surface to attack. Do not justify. The moment you explain why, you have invited a debate about whether your reason is good enough, and the reason was never the point. Your preference is sufficient. Do not apologize on the way out. No, I am sorry. It is just that. Just no. Repeat, rather than escalate. When it does not land, say the same thing again in the same tone. Do not go louder, and do not go longer, and expect no acknowledgement. You will not get one. If you are waiting for the moment where they say, "You are right, I see it now," you will keep talking long past the point where you should have stopped. The tool worked if the tactic stopped producing. That is the only measure there is. Finally, the mistakes. Over-explaining. The single most common failure. You have a good reason, so you share it. And now you are negotiating. The parting shot. You held beautifully for 20 minutes and then said one cruel, true thing on the way out. And now that sentence is the whole story of the argument, permanently. Announcing boundaries as threats. Said in anger, a boundary becomes an ultimatum, and ultimatums invite escalation. Say it in a calm moment, quietly, as information rather than as a warning, deploying everything at once. Choose one tool and use it consistently for a month. That will change more than trying all 10 badly in a single evening. Chapter 14. When you stop complying, I need to prepare you for something. Because this is where people who have done everything right lose their nerve and go back. When you begin using what is in this book, it will get worse before it gets better. Not sometimes. Almost always. And if you do not know that in advance, you will read the deterioration as evidence that you made a mistake, and you will retreat, and everything will be harder next time, because you will have taught them that pressure works on you. So understand what is actually happening. You have removed the return on a set of behaviors that have been reliable for years. Nobody abandons a reliable tool at the first failure. They apply it harder. The escalation is not a sign that you were wrong. It is confirmation that what you were dealing with was a strategy rather than a feeling. Because feelings do not intensify when you stop rewarding them. It usually moves through stages. The first stage is intensification. The same tactics turned up. The silence lasts 3 days instead of an afternoon. The distress is larger and louder. The guilt is heavier. This is the cheapest response available, so it is always tried first. The second stage is novelty. When the familiar tools fail, new ones appear, and some of them will be things you have never seen in all your years with this person. A sudden crisis, an illness, a financial emergency, a dramatic accusation about something you supposedly did, an entirely new grievance from years ago. The content is unpredictable. The timing never is. Watch when it arrives, not what it is. The third stage is the reversal. And this is the most dangerous moment in the entire process. The person from the beginning comes back, not an approximation of them. The real thing. The attention, the warmth, the interest, the version of them that made you fall in love or made you trust them, restored in full, exactly as you remember it. And it will devastate you because it feels like proof. It feels like evidence that the good version was always the true one, that everything since has been circumstance and stress, that you were becoming cold and suspicious over nothing, and that all of it can be undone by simply softening. I want to give you the one thought that gets people through this. So, hold on to it carefully. The ability to produce that person on demand is not evidence of goodness. It is evidence of control. Sit with that. If they can be that person in the week they need something from you, then that person was always available, which means every cold month, every withdrawal, every stretch of contempt was not incapacity. It was allocation. They were choosing, and the choice was against you. And the resource has now been released because there is something to protect. That is not a reason to soften. That is the clearest information you have ever received about them. The fourth stage is third parties. The narrative moves outward. Mutual friends hear that you have changed, that you have gone cold, that something is wrong with you, that they are worried. Family gets a version. Colleagues get a version. And it is rarely a direct attack. It is almost always concern, delivered sadly, by someone who appears to be trying to protect you. You will feel an overwhelming need to correct this, and I want you to resist it. Which brings us to how you hold. Here is how you get through it. First, expect it. Behavior you have predicted has far less power over you than behavior that arrives as a surprise. When the crisis lands on the third day of your new boundary, you want to be able to think, there it is, rather than, oh no, what have I done? Second, decide in calm and act in the storm. Your decision was made when you were clear-headed. The storm is not new information, it is pressure, and pressure is precisely the condition under which your judgment cannot be trusted. Do not reconsider anything in the middle of an escalation. Reconsider afterwards if you want to, when you can think again. Third, do not defend yourself to third parties. This is counterintuitive, and it is correct. If you go around explaining your side to 11 people, you look exactly like somebody with something to explain. And you keep the story alive in all 11 of those relationships. The counter to being talked about is not rebuttal. It is time and consistency. People believe what they observe over what they are told. And if you are calm, steady, kind, and unremarkable for 6 months, the account collapses without you ever touching it. If someone comes to you concerned, the whole of your answer can be this: I know there are 2 versions of this going around. I am not going to argue about it. If you want to know how I am, ask me directly, and I will tell you. Fourth, reduce the surface. Fewer channels, shorter replies, more time before responding. Not as punishment, simply because volume is what escalation feeds on. Fifth, and this is the discipline that holds everything else together, stop explaining your reasoning. Every reason you give is material. A reason can be argued with, undermined, disproved, or satisfied in some technical way that changes nothing at all. The moment you say, I am doing this because, you have converted a decision into a proposal. The whole of it is this: my answer has not changed. Say it as often as required. Add nothing to it. It is not cruel. It is simply finished. And when the reversal comes, when the good version returns, and it is wonderful, and you can feel yourself wanting to believe it, do not argue with it and do not reject it coldly. Just apply time. I am glad things have felt better this week. I am still taking this slowly, because time is the one thing a reversal cannot survive. It is a performance, and performances have a running time. Given weeks rather than days, it ends on its own, and you will not have to prove anything to anybody, least of all to yourself. Now, the last thing in this chapter, said plainly, if any of this turns into something that frightens you, if you are threatened, followed, physically prevented from leaving, or find yourself managing your own safety, then you are no longer dealing with a communication problem. And nothing in this book is the right instrument for it. That is a situation for people whose actual job it is. Domestic abuse services, the police, a lawyer, a doctor. Tell one person in your life the truth of it, out loud, today. There is no version of that which makes you dramatic, and there is no threshold you have to reach first before you are allowed to ask for help. Chapter 15. Becoming unmanipulable. We have arrived at the last chapter, and I am not going to end it with a summary, because a list of tactics is not what protects you. Here is the truth about people who are genuinely hard to manipulate. They are not the most vigilant. In fact, they are often noticeably relaxed. They are not scanning conversations for warning signs. They are not suspicious of new people, and they do not treat every kindness as a possible transaction. Constant vigilance is not the end point of this work. It is a symptom of the injury, and if you stop there, you have only swapped one prison for another. The person who cannot be manipulated is not armored. They are simply difficult to get hold of. And there are 6 reasons why. The first is that they trust their own perception. This is the thing that gets damaged most. And it is the thing that has to be rebuilt first. Somewhere along the way, you learn to check your reading of events against somebody else before you would accept it. You need that back. And it is rebuilt through small repetitions rather than one big realization. So practice on things that do not matter. Notice something. Form a view and simply keep it. That film was not good. That meeting went badly. I did not enjoy that evening. Do not test it against anyone. Do not soften it. Just hold an opinion privately and let it stand. And when somebody tells you that something you clearly remember did not happen, you are allowed to conclude that they are wrong. Not necessarily out loud, but in your own mind, where it counts. The second, and this is the big one, is comfort with disapproval. Almost every tactic in this audiobook runs on a single fear. The fear of being thought badly of. Guilt works because you cannot bear to be seen as ungrateful. Silence works because you cannot bear to be seen as the cause. Contempt in a joke works because you cannot bear to be seen as humorless. Deflection works because you cannot bear to be seen as unfair. Remove that fear, and the entire structure loses its power source at once. I am not asking you to stop caring what people think. That is neither possible nor desirable. I am asking you to become able to tolerate it, to sit in a room where somebody is displeased with you and not fix it, to let a person believe something unflattering and untrue about you, and go on with your day. Practice it in small doses. Decline an invitation without giving a reason. Send back the wrong order. Say, "I would rather not," out loud, with nothing after it. Each one is a repetition, and the discomfort fades much faster than you expect. A person who can be disliked without flinching has almost no attack surface left. The third is slowness as a permanent policy, not caution about particular people. A general habit of never deciding at the speed you are asked to decide. Over a lifetime it costs you nothing, because good things survive delay, and it removes the single condition that nearly every manipulation requires. The fourth is plurality. Keep many relationships, not because any one of them is suspect, but because no single person should ever hold a monopoly on your view of reality. Friendships you maintain independently. People who knew you before. A life that would still have a shape if any one relationship ended. That is not distrust of your partner or your friend. It is the difference between a structure with one supporting wall and a structure with several. The fifth is having standards decided in advance. Know what you will not accept before you are in a situation that tests it. Write it down, if that helps, because the moment of pressure is the worst possible time to be working out where your limits are. And a person who has already decided is enormously harder to move than a person deciding live. The sixth is willingness to lose the relationship. This is the hardest one, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Somebody who absolutely cannot lose a relationship has no ability to shape it. Every request has to be granted, because refusal risks the thing they cannot risk. And that is not a secret. It is visible, and it is the first thing a manipulative person establishes about you. I am not telling you to hold everyone at arm's length. I am telling you that somewhere inside you there must be a quiet, unspoken knowledge that you would survive this ending. Not a threat, not something you ever say aloud, just a fact you carry. That single internal fact changes how you speak, what you tolerate, and what other people believe about you. And it does all of that without you mentioning it once. Now, the warning, because there is a failure mode for this material, and it is a common one, do not become closed. Some people finish something like this and quietly decide that the answer is never to be vulnerable again, to treat warmth as a warning sign, to assume everybody has an angle, to keep every person at a distance where they cannot be reached. That is not safety. That is the same wound wearing different clothes. And it costs you the good things too, because everything worth having in a human life arrives through the exact opening you would be sealing shut. The person who hurt you takes something when they hurt you. If you close permanently, they take the rest of it afterwards, and they do not even have to be there for it. The goal was never armor. It was discernment. Armor keeps everything out. Discernment lets you open the door and know who is standing in it. And one more thing that needs saying plainly before we finish. If, listening to this, you have recognized not a difficult friendship or an awkward colleague, but the actual daily conditions of your life, then what you are living inside is not a communication problem, and it is not something you can fix by becoming better at conversations. It is abuse. It has a name, and there are people whose entire profession is helping with exactly this. A therapist, a domestic abuse service, a doctor, one honest friend. You do not need permission, and you do not need to be certain. You are allowed to ask for help while you are still working out what is happening to you. So, let me leave you where we began. I told you at the start that intelligence would not protect you, because manipulation does not attack your intelligence. It attacks your decency. your empathy, your fairness, your loyalty, your willingness to believe that you might be the one who has it wrong. Here is what I hope you understand now. Not one of those qualities was ever the problem. You do not have to become suspicious, hard, or small in order to be safe. You only have to be able to see. Because everything in this audiobook depends on a single condition, and it is the same condition in every chapter. Manipulation requires you not to have a name for what is happening. It needs the dark. Guilt only works while it looks like generosity. Silence only works while it looks like a mood. The joke only works while it looks like a joke. You now have names for all of them, and a tactic you can name out loud, calmly, in the room, while it is happening, is no longer a threat to you. It is just a move you have seen before. You are going to notice something over the coming months, and almost everyone who learns this material reports the same thing. The people who were doing this will begin to fade out of your life on their own. There will be no confrontation and no dramatic ending. They will simply find you difficult to work with, and they will go and look for somebody easier. Let them go, and then notice who is still standing there once they have gone, because the people who remain, the ones who are perfectly comfortable with your slowness, your boundaries, your clear eyes, and your no, are the ones who were never trying to take anything from you in the first place. That is what all of this was for. Not to make you harder, to make you clear, and to make certain that from now on, the only people who can get close to you are the ones who came to give something rather than to take it.